All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Tom and Josh Show. I'm Josh, and today we're going to be talking about our Week 5 waiver projections. So these are guys who are getting picked up a ton in leagues right now, and we're going to talk about, some guys who we feel do and do not deserve that spot on your roster. Tom, I'm going to kick it over to you. Who do you have on your list?
All right. Number one, I think is a guy that you're going to be seeing across all of your leagues in any format, and that's Damien Williams. So we've got David Montgomery out. We don't know for quite how long, the severity of that injury is something that's still in play, but I think he's a good play against the Raiders if you were able to pick him up. I'd feel pretty good about playing him. He's a decent pass-catching back. I can see Justin Fields using him as kind of a safety blanket, check down, as we see kind of rookie quarterbacks do with their running backs from time to time. And I know it was against the Lions, but 6.8 yards per carry on only a handful of attempts,
Sure.
You couldn't ask much more for a guy that just kind of rolled in off of the bench. So that's how I feel about Damien Williams. What do you see in him for this week?
Sure. So I think definitely for this week he would be an ad for me for sure. You start thinking about long term this season. I think he's probably got 2 weeks, right? And so obviously this week, playing the Raiders, next week playing the Packers. I think that he finds some room to run. Probably finds the end zone at least once, right? As most backs do. After the Packers, though, Tariq Cohen can come back for the Bears. And so he's been on that PUP list. And, I think after he comes back, obviously Damien Williams' value is going to go down tremendously. And even David Montgomery, when he comes back later in the season, we're probably talking week 11 after their bye. His value is going to be hurting a little bit too, but that's kind of neither here nor there for now. But for Damien Williams, right, he's probably a better option in a 10-man league, in a 12-man league, right? If he's available and you can pick him up,
right.
And right in 10-man leagues, you're probably looking at, he's I don't think he's going to be a 1-for-1 replacement with David Montgomery, so you very likely have somebody else on your bench who could fill in. So, all right. So that said, we talked about Damien Williams. Okay. Another guy who's getting picked up a ton right now and is being talked about is Samaje Perine. Right. So I had to look up how to pronounce his last name. I've always said Perine, and a couple years ago, right? Sure. A couple of years ago, I drafted him. When he first got drafted out of Washington, into Washington. Sorry. A lot of buzz. So he's always been kind of this guy. As soon as he's about to come in, this buzz has happened. And when he was in Washington, it didn't pan out for him. This week, Mixon's not guaranteed out, right? And they're saying now he's closer to day-to-day. But, right, and I was part of the squad who had Mixon last year, where all of a sudden it was kind of this ominous injury, right? And the Bengals kept him out. They just held him out after week 6. And, right, so I'm not going to say that that's happening again this time. For me, though, once he gets in the mix, Chris Evans has been showing a lot of promise for them. So I'd be okay waiting on Samaje here and just kind of feeling it out, right? If all of a sudden next week we get there and Mixon is still out, then probably if he's still available at that time, then I would go for it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I would pass on him as well, but if you're really hurting for running backs, I can see why someone would add him. I don't hate it. So I like him better than Chris Evans. I think if Mixon misses time, then Samaje is the guy to have. He's got a reception in every game. You got to figure in a more playing time role that would go up. And you alluded to this with Mixon last year. He's one of the guys that I just irrationally fear of injury.
Sure.
You know, it's, every Joe Mixon owner has a story, right? So, but Perine has played as a bell cow role before. You know, has what was it, 15 plus carries in at least 6 games. And granted, that was 2017, it's a few years ago, but you know, he can do it. You know, it's not crazy to think that if Mixon does miss time, that he'd be the guy to have in that backfield.
Sure. Sure. And I don't know if the big thing about him coming out of college, his biceps. I don't know if you've seen these pictures. This dude is massive. So certainly can handle the load of a bell cow back when given the opportunity. His body can handle it. What do you got next?
So next we have Alex Collins out of Seattle. I'm passing on him. You know, his snap percentage is increasing and his touches are going up every week, but I don't really see it. You know, he got a touchdown last week that was kind of a vulture. Chris Carson's not officially out at this point, I don't think. But I don't really see it at all personally. Right. What do you think?
I think I'm there too, and especially with this week they're playing tonight, right? They're playing Thursday night, and we're so late in the game here. We still don't know what's happening with Carson. For me to go on to pick somebody up and try to throw him in there last minute, and it's a guy that we're not sure about if he's going to do anything. That's where I'm passing to. If you have a bench stash kind of available, if I were to pick between me personally, Perine and Collins, I would probably do Collins. And the reason I do that, and we've talked about every Joe Mixon owner has a story and whatever. And I've also had Carson a few years, and there always seems to be time where he's got something going on as well. So in that backfield in Seattle, it's a good offense. If Carson misses time, I probably like Collins more than a Rashad Penny or a DJ Dallas. Right, that's kind of something to think about. If you're looking for a stash, he could be a guy. The matchup, though, tonight, if you were to kind of back off these words, right, and you said, I'm going to go for it anyway, the matchup's been surprisingly soft, right? So the Rams have surprisingly given up a good number of points to opposing running backs this year. And so if Carson is out and all the stars align and you've got a flex spot that you've got to put him in, go for it. We've talked about some running backs. We're going to change gears here briefly to a wide receiver, somebody who's not rostered surprisingly in a lot of leagues, Jamison Crowder. My advice here, you should have already done this. You should have already picked him up. And, especially if you're in a PPR league, he provides one of the safest floors in the game. He's done this for years, especially with the quarterbacks that the Jets have brought in, the time that they've had to throw. He's a guy that they can dump passes off to over and over and over again. So in his first game back, seeing 9 targets, plus, Wilson is in dire need of just a quick release there. He's got Corey Davis, but, to this point, Corey Davis is just going long pretty much. So, you look over their next 6, they've got Atlanta, pretty good matchup, right? And then you've got New England, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Buffalo after their bye. And the 2 games there in their division, the New England and Buffalo, they scared the crap out of me. I'm not going to lie. But they'll be in a passing script early. Crowder is going to be a really good pickup for that reason.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You need to run to grab Jamison Crowder. He should be on your team. I think I looked this morning in Yahoo, and he's only owned in 36% of leagues, which to me is criminally under-owned for a guy, right, who has a high floor and a decent ceiling, in my opinion. And like you mentioned, they've got some tough divisional games, but if you're a receiver on a bad teams, that just means more negative game scripts where Zach Wilson's going to be throwing to try to get them out of that. And is it going to lead to some interceptions? Probably. But on the other side of that is Jamison Crowder. You mentioned the nine targets he had, and that was only on 62% of snaps in the game, which I imagine will only go up. I'm starting Jamison Crowder in a couple of my leagues this week, especially against Atlanta, who has given up a lot of points to teams' number one receivers. We had Devonta Smith in a half-point PPR league with 16 points, Mike Evans in week 2 with 22 points, Galladay in week 3 had 8 points, but we had Terry McLaurin last week with 27 points. I just think this Atlanta secondary is weak, and I think Jamison Crowder is someone that's really going to be able to take advantage of that. So, I'm starting him over a guy like Allen Robinson in one league, for example. I really see it this week, and putting some of my eggs into that basket.
Sure. So we'll get back with you next week, and we'll see how that played out for you, for sure. Interesting take, right? The Allen Robinson, Jamison Crowder, and putting Crowder over the top of him. And the more I think about it, the more I don't disagree. I can't necessarily disagree with that. So so go ahead and move us on here.
Sure. Yeah. And like you said, they might, hopefully it doesn't make me look too foolish, but
sure.
Look, that's the play I'm going
with. So that's what happens, right? Yeah.
Right. The next couple of items on our list to talk about were defenses. I'm someone that streams all of my defenses. I draft them in the last round, so I'm always looking to kind of find an edge on the waiver wire with defenses and who they're playing. And one of the defenses I like this week is the Vikings. Detroit is allowing 2.5 sacks per game, so I think there's a lot of opportunity there for Minnesota to get pressure up front. And teams that are playing against the Lions, the defense is averaging 7 points per game, which isn't as high as I would have thought, given that, the offensive woes on the Lions have been kind of present. And the Vikings D is averaging about 6 points per contest, but I'll take my chances here against a Detroit offense that I'm just frankly not totally worried about. What do you see this week in the Vikings D?
Yeah, definitely think that they are a great play this week against the Lions. I think that they're certainly good for a few turnovers this week. See everything that happened last week for the Lions, and you get Jared Goff bouncing the ball off his chest and everything. I think you get at least an interception, probably a fumble or two. So especially with a good pass rush. So I think that definitely a good play this week. Now another team, right? New England, and something to think about, right? Is it's possible that New England is still available in your league. And, if I'm choosing between Minnesota against the Lions or New England against Houston, I'm probably going New England here. But, again, Minnesota is much more likely available in your league to stream. So that would be, right, Minnesota, definitely a good stream against the Lions. Moving on to our next defense, right, that we're going to talk about, one that I prioritize probably Minnesota over, but the Raiders. Okay. In my opinion, there's probably better options here than the Raiders. Right. If you're in a deep league and it's between the Raiders and the Falcons, right, or something like that, probably go Raiders. But on the year, okay, now get this, right? The Raiders are averaging the same number of points, the defense, as fantasy points. The same number of fantasy points as the Jets, right? And so it's one of those things where, you start getting to this level of defenses and you could go so many different ways. With the Raiders playing the Bears, you've got Justin Fields kind of heating up here, maybe, right? To me, he seems a little bit less susceptible to those monster turnover games that we saw somebody like Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence have earlier in the year, mainly because he holds on to the ball and runs with it, right? So maybe he fumbles it once, but I don't think we're going to see a 4 interception game from him, rather. So, then again, right, I'm the guy, we were talking about streaming defenses. I went ahead and drafted Washington's defense 2 rounds too early this year in our dynasty league. So, and they're third to last on the season. So, open to what you're thinking about the Raiders.
Yeah, I think I'd stick with the Vikings too, but it is closer than I thought. The Vikings D, like researching that kind of led me to the Raiders against the Bears, and the Raiders D is only averaging a little over 4 points a game, which not encouraging. But opposing defenses against the Bears have had some success. That's inflated a little maybe by that Cleveland-Chicago game where the Bears just looked terrible. So, and I don't see the Bears looking that bad again. I think they have the play calling a little bit better handled, it would seem, to suit Justin Fields. So since he's been named QB1, I don't like the Raiders D quite as much, but I think it's a streamable option. If you're in a deep league, 14 teams, I can see myself taking a flyer on the Raiders against a Bears offense that, you're right, without David Montgomery, like we mentioned before. I'm not sure how big the deep threats are going to be, and a lot of quarterback rushes. So I think this is a safe, streamable defense.
Sure. So that concludes kind of our takes on Week 5 waiver pickups, right? So be sure to let us know if you guys have any disagreements. We're going to be keeping an eye on our takes here, kind of, and we'll talk about them moving forward into future videos. So with that, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you tune in next week as we talk more about Week 6 waivers and our thoughts. So thanks.
Thanks, guys.